The fluffy little dog sleeping on that couch weighs about 5 pounds. You could lift it with one hand. It looks like a living cotton ball. But 300 years ago, its ancestor weighed 30 pounds. It pulled sleds across frozen rivers. It guarded livestock through Arctic winters that would kill most animals alive today. It was not a lap dog. It was a working beast. So how did a powerful sled dog from the frozen north turn into the smallest member of its entire family? And why, after all that shrinking, does it still act like it's the toughest dog in the room? That's what this whole channel is about. So let's start at the beginning. The Pomeranian is part of an ancient group of dogs called the Spitz family. You know them when you see them. Thick double coats, pointed ears that stand straight up, curled tails that flip over the back, faces that look a little bit like a fox and a little bit like a wolf. These dogs came from the coldest places on earth: Iceland, Lapland, Siberia, the far edges of the north, where winter lasts most of the year. And these were not pets. They had jobs, real ones. They herded reindeer, they guarded sheep, and the biggest of them pulled sleds across ice, hauling people and supplies through snow no horse could survive. To do that kind of work, you need size. You need strength. You need a coat thick enough to sleep outside in a blizzard. The early Spitz dog had all three. Now here is where the story gets its name. There was a region in Central Europe sitting along the Baltic Sea, split today between Poland and Germany. It was called Pomerania. And in Pomerania, people kept this large northern Spitz dog and slowly, over many generations, began to breed them smaller. Nobody woke up one day and decided to invent a tiny dog. It happened slowly. Breeders kept choosing the smaller puppies, the friendlier ones, the ones that did well closer to the house instead of out in the fields. Litter after litter, generation after generation, the dogs got smaller, and the breed took the name of the place it was shaped, Pomerania. The Pomeranian. But back then, a Pomeranian was still not the tiny dog you know today. In the 1700s, a Pomeranian could weigh 20, even 30 pounds. That's the size of a small herding dog. These were still substantial animals. White was the most common color, and they were already becoming popular with people who had money and influence. In fact, some of history's most famous minds owned them. The composer Mozart had a Pomeranian he adored. He even dedicated a piece of music to it. The painter Michelangelo is said to have kept a small Pomeranian-type dog that sat on a satin pillow and watched him paint the Sistine Chapel. The scientist Isaac Newton had one too. Its name was Diamond. And legend says that Diamond once knocked over a candle and burned years of Newton's notes. Whether that story is fully true or not, it tells you something. These dogs were already in the rooms where history was being made. But the single biggest moment in the Pomeranian story, the moment that changed the breed forever, came from a queen. Her name was Queen Victoria of England, and she was, without exaggeration, obsessed with dogs. Over her lifetime, she kept hundreds of them, but in 1888, while traveling in Italy, she fell in love with one specific small Pomeranian. She brought it home to England. Its name was Marco, and Marco was small, much smaller than the typical Pomeranian of the time, around 12 pounds. The queen adored him. She started breeding Pomeranians herself, and she pushed hard for one thing in particular: smaller. She wanted them smaller. Now here is the part most people don't understand about history. When a queen loves something, the whole country copies her. Suddenly, every fashionable family in England wanted a Pomeranian. And not just any Pomeranian, they wanted the small kind, the kind the queen had. So breeders raced to meet the demand. In the span of just a few decades, the breed's average size dropped by roughly half. The 30-pound sled dog became a 6-pound companion. It is one of the fastest, most dramatic size changes in the entire history of dogs. And it happened because one woman fell in love with one small dog. Queen Victoria loved her Pomeranians right to the very end. When she was dying in 1901, she asked for one of them, a little dog named Tari, to be brought to her bed. He stayed with her. That's how deep the bond went. So that's how the Pomeranian got tiny. But it leaves the real question, the one I asked at the start. If you shrink a tough Arctic working dog down to 5 pounds, do you also shrink its spirit? And the answer is, every Pomeranian owner already knows, is absolutely not. Because the size changed, the attitude didn't. Inside that tiny body is still a Spitz, still a guardian, still a dog that believes with total confidence that it is large and in charge. Ask anyone who owns one. A Pomeranian will stand at the window and bark down a dog 10 times its size and genuinely mean it. That's not silliness. That's 1,000 years of guarding instinct that no amount of shrinking could breed out. And their toughness is not just attitude. Here is a fact that surprises almost everyone. When the Titanic sank in 1912, 3 dogs survived. Out of all the animals on that ship, only 3 made it onto the lifeboats. And 2 of those 3 survivors were Pomeranians. Tiny dogs carried in the arms of their owners who refused to leave them behind. Survivors in every sense of the word. That is the real history of this breed. Not a fragile toy, a survivor in a small package. A working dog that traded the sled for the sofa, but never gave up the spirit. So the next time you see one of these little cotton balls trotting down the street like it owns the entire block, remember what you are actually looking at. You are looking at the great-great-grandchild of an Arctic sled beast, a wolf-faced guardian shrunk down by a queen's love, carrying the heart of a dog 10 times its size. That's where the Pomeranian comes from, but where it comes from is only half the story. Because the question I get asked the most is not about history, it's about the mind. People want to know what's actually going on inside that fluffy little head. How smart is a Pomeranian, really? Why do they understand some words but completely ignore others? And why do they seem to know exactly what you are feeling before you do? That's what we are getting into next time. The hidden intelligence of the Pomeranian and the surprising things science has discovered about how tiny brains actually work. So if you got one of these dogs sleeping near you right now, give it a little look. There is a lot more going on in there than you think. I'm glad you're here at the start of this. Stick around. This is going to be a fun one.